Saludos, conocedores de la imaginación. Yo soy Robert Meyer Burnett, conectando con ustedes, los miembros de la singularidad Post-Geek, y especialmente con nuestros amigos del mundo hispanoparlante. Muy pronto debutará Latin X-Men, nuestro primer programa en español, con Alex Montano y Roberto Suárez. Y quién sabe, tal vez yo los visite de vez en cuando. Sintonízate pronto con Latin X-Men, aquí en la singularidad Post-Geek.
Greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, Robert Meyer Burnett. I invite you to watch and listen to the Designing Hollywood podcast, brought to you by Martika Ibarra and the great, legendary Hollywood costume designer, Marilyn Vance. I am afforded the wonderful opportunity of co-hosting the show. If you are interested in the magic of Hollywood, the design of Hollywood, the clothes of Hollywood, watch the Designing Hollywood podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts from, or find the video version on the John Campea YouTube channel. That's right, the Designing Hollywood podcast. Why would you ever want to miss it? Especially if you love the movies.
Robservations with Robert Meyer Burnett.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of sci-fi and cinema, your evangelist of the imagination, and the as-yet undefined existential Mr. Rogers, Robert Meyer Burnett. That's right, that's me, and I'm coming at you, you imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. This is Robservations, episode 812. Now, you know, I like to tout my own, blow my own horn. Don't we all? But today, I want to point out that there was a great physical media release coming at you from Kino Lorber in 4K, The Usual Suspects, the first time out on 4K disc with a brand new 16-bit transfer supervised by director of photography Newton Thomas Siegel, Tom to his friends. And what's so great about this release of The Usual Suspects is myself, along with the great Carrie David, produced the special features. They are very extensive, and they have been out of print since 2002. Kino Lorber has brought them back. Now, of course, because they were done in 2001, they are standard definition. But I worked on them with filmmaker Dave Parker. He, of course, who directed The Hills Run Red. We all worked on them together, and it's a great package. So it's great to see our own work back in print after 21 years. Once again, that is The Usual Suspects from Kino Lorber. Definitely something to check out if you are a physical media fan. I've heard it from our friend Twin Flicks, or friends at Twin Flicks, that the transfer is quite spectacular. I haven't seen the transfer yet. I haven't quite looked at it, but it is Dolby Vision. So that is very, very, very exciting. The best film has ever looked, I hear. Anyway, we had some really exciting news drop. Very, very exciting news. Now, I have often talked about on this show and on the John Campea show how Kevin Feige is a singular entity over at Marvel. I have said that there is no one in Hollywood who is remotely similar to him. He started working for Richard Donner around the time, when he was a young whippersnapper. And of course, then he moved on and he became a producer. He worked for Avi Arad and became a producer on Marvel properties. He worked on 14 Marvel movies as a producer before the MCU. So basically, his job in life was really to learn the business and produce a bunch of Marvel movies to see what worked, to see what didn't work. And then he began over at Paramount, the MCU in 2008, launching Iron Man, which at the time people thought was iffy. You had Robert Downey Jr. after his troubles and tribulations coming back to the business, playing Tony Stark. And of course, that film was a monster hit, grossing over $500 million, making Iron Man a household name and starting off the Marvel Cinematic Universe in grand fashion. Now, of course, Wakanda Forever, which comes out, it's actually having its premiere tomorrow night. Wakanda Forever is having its world premiere tomorrow night here in Hollywood. And that is the 30th Marvel Cinematic Cinematic Universe film. Now, that doesn't even include the TV series that have been part of Phase 4, nor does it include the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special that comes out for Thanksgiving, I believe, that dropped its first trailer today. Who knew that Kevin Bacon, it's no longer 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, it's six AUs or 6 parsecs of Kevin Bacon, because the Guardians of the Galaxy come to Earth to bring Kevin Bacon as a Christmas present back to Star-Lord. I mean, they should have just brought Star-Lord to Kevin Bacon's house. I don't know how it's going to go. The trailer looked delightful. Of course, that was directed by James Gunn. Why do I talk about this? You all know. You've all read the news. David Zaslav has swung the axe of Zaslav in another way. He hasn't cut anything. He's added something. Many good editors do add things and make their final products better. A monstrous seismic shift happened in Hollywood today. As we all know, Walter Hamada officially left DC, leaving the post. They have created the new separate DC Studios along the lines of the MCU, Marvel Studios. And DC Studios was currently, well, as of today, has been rudderless, without direction, without command, without leadership. That all changed today in grand fashion. As we all know, Peter Safran and James Gunn have taken over they're going to share the reins of DC Studios. Now, before we get into James Gunn, I'd like to address Peter Safran. Now, I met both of them 22 years ago. We actually all worked on a project together. I was the associate producer of a movie called The Specials that James Gunn wrote that was directed by Craig Mazin. It was the first thing that he directed. Low-budget thing, great cast. James Gunn wrote it. He was also in the film with his brother Sean, playing Minute Man. I don't know if you've seen that, but Peter Safran was a co-executive producer of that movie. Now, since then, Peter Safran, as a producer, like Kevin Feige before him, worked his way up in the business. And he produced a lot of goofy movies, like the parody movies like Scary Movie and Meet the Spartans. And he did Jiminy Glick in La La Wood, believe it or not. Disaster movie. Not great films, but as he worked his way up as a producer, he became the producer of films and TV shows. He produced Buried, the Ryan Reynolds trapped in a one-location movie back in 2010. And as he worked his way up, just him and Kevin Feige Kevin Feige had the MCU, but Peter Safran did a lot of different kinds of things. He wound up as a producer working with James Wan on The Conjuring. He did Annabelle. He also did, no one's perfect. He did the American remake of Martyrs, which, gotta say, Peter, really sucked compared to the original. But he also produced The Conjuring 2. And for James Gunn, things like the Belko Experiment. So what's interesting about Peter Safran is he has very deep ties to both James Gunn and to James Wan. Basically, two men that are pretty much going to be responsible of Warner Brothers output for the next few years. And of course, James Wan, the Conjuring universe has done incredibly well. And Peter Safran worked on Annabelle Creation, The Nun. But at the same time, he also produced Aquaman, Shazam, The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, Suicide Squad for James, Peacemaker, Shazam, Fury of the Gods, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, The Nun 2, and on and on and on. So, while Peter Safran did not specialize in superhero fare, he did produce one of Warner Brothers' most successful ongoing franchises, which is the Conjuring franchise. And of course, he's teamed up with James Gunn on a number of occasions. And of course, he's worked with James Wan, who has coming off the heels of the $1 billion grossing Aquaman, which Peter Safran, I mean, he's got his fingers in a lot of pies. And I can't think, I mean, I got to give it up for David Zaslav for coming up with Peter Safran and James Gunn to co-run DC Studios. Remember, James Gunn goes all the way back to Troma with Lloyd Kaufman's Troma. So James Gunn has been in the business, working his way up as a low-budget filmmaker. He, of course, made things like Super and Slither, and the storytelling chops he demonstrated in those movies led him to move on to make Guardians of the Galaxy, which, by the way, James is having a big day because Marvel Studios dropped the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special. And then, of course, I believe next May, Guardians of the Galaxy 3 comes out. So will James Gunn's new position at Warner Brothers and DC affect any of his duties in regards to getting the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special out and the Guardians of the Galaxy 3 film out? No. He'll be able to do whatever he needs to do to get those films out. But I will say this. I think that Marvel and Disney are hugely diminished today, but I understand why. The problem is the MCU is hamstrung. James Gunn is in his heart, if you've ever read his novel, The Toy Collector, it's dark. James Gunn has a dark heart. He likes dark humor. And there are things, obviously, you can see in his version of the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker, they would never let him do at Disney. Never. Ever. So I think James Gunn has made the right choice. He made his mark and cut his teeth on large budget franchise pictures over at Disney underneath Kevin Feige, and now he and Peter Safran are going to forge a new path together with allies like James Wan, who has quietly become a force to be reckoned with in the industry, but specifically at Warner Brothers. When I worked at Warner Brothers back in 89 and 90 and 91, a long time ago at the very beginning of my career, when I was a newly minted 22-year-old right out of film school, having just come off of Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, Warner Brothers was the home of filmmakers. It was a studio where filmmakers such as Clint Eastwood and as Malpazzo Productions had been there forever. They're still there, I believe, unless David Zaslav has finally chopped Clint free at 91 or 92. But I think that of all the moves made in Hollywood, of all the executives shuffling around, between Peter Safran, James Gunn, and lest we not forget, James Wan, and they also have ties to other producers like Dan Lin and Roy Lee. Dan Lin didn't want to take the job, but Dan Lin and Roy Lee are also formidable forces in Hollywood. And I think, in a way, I don't know what Dan Lin and Roy Lee's involvement at Warner Brothers is going to be moving forward, but let's call them adjacent producers. Warner Brothers has become now a home of a very formidable force of genre and hit-making producers that I don't know where they're going to go, but I think that Warner Brothers and David Zaslav has just solidified. Of course, you also have Mike DeLuca and his team over there that came out of New Line. So Warner Brothers, as far as I can understand, has just become a formidable force, a great creative place to go to work. Now, of course, at the same time, there's blood in the water because many people have lost their jobs. But that's to be expected because of the cost cutting. Now, I want to read this article that was recently published in Deadline. And the article is How James Gunn and Peter Safran Landed Top Spots at DC Studios. Anthony D'Alessandro published this at 1:17 this afternoon. Finally, Warner Brothers Discovery boss David Zaslav has a new head of DC Studios, and it's not one but two. Guardians of the Galaxy and Suicide Squad filmmaker James Gunn and DC Films producer Peter Safran. Both have the new titles of co-chairman and chief executive officers of DC Studios, overseeing the overall creative direction of the DC universe across film, TV, and animation under a single banner. The duo will report to David Zaslav, but will also be in close correspondence with Warner Brothers Film Group co-chairs and CEOs Mike DeLuca and Pam Abdi on such matters as marketing, distribution, and capital spend, just so everyone is on the same page. Gunn and Safran start effective November 1st. Now, James Gunn would have had to, and also David Zaslav understands this, had to carve out time to promote Guardians of the Galaxy and finish all post-production. They knew that was the case going in. So there's not going to be any kind of, wait, where's the rest of this article? I'm just seeing advertising. Did it all just disappear? Where did it all go? Here we go. So people are going, well, what's going to happen? Well, I mean, he's obligated contractually to do marketing for, and to get the film done for Disney, so that's not a problem. What happened here? Buzz was intent that Safran was going to get the job last week in the wake of former DC Films president Walter Hamada departing the studio. Then insiders told us that wasn't true, that the first look deal for the Safran company announced last week was just a re-up. Turns out that Safran didn't want to run DC alone unless there was a creative face, that being his Peacemaker and Suicide Squad partner, James Gunn. Now remember, Peter Safran has known James Gunn at least since I worked with James Gunn over 20 years ago. So this is a long-standing relationship that he's had, just like he's had a long-standing relationship with James Gunn. Peter Safran is a producer on Aquaman, the new Aquaman 2, Legend or The Lost Kingdom. Apparently, the pair became even more serious contenders for the job as they were advising Zaslav on candidates, one of those previously being Warner Brothers veteran and Lego movie producer Dan Lin. In his new role, Gunn is exclusive to Warner Brothers Discovery DC. No more Marvel. He can only direct TV series and movies for Warner Discovery and DC. Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 comes out via Disney and Marvel on May 5th, 2023. There's also a Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special hitting Disney+. The model Zaslav and DeLuca were eyeing here in the Gunn Safran for the new DC label was one akin to Disney's Pixar, where there is a creative and a business face. Not a bad company to emulate. Meanwhile, the Safran Company will continue to be run by its president of production, John Rickard. They have several projects in the mix inside and outside Warner's DC, including the Idris Elba, John Cena action feature, Heads of State, in the works at Amazon Studios. While Lin was a serious candidate, we hear he asked Zaslav for too much. Some insiders say that untangling Lin from his deal at Universal, which had a financing component, was hard, but others say it wasn't that complicated. Talks simply fell apart. Come on, man. Dan Lin has a good thing going. He's been making a lot of money. He doesn't want to run a studio. He wants to produce. Remember, most studio executives, they would rather be producing movies anyway. Why deal with the headache of everybody else that's doing what they want to do, which is make movies? So I understand Dan Lin. He had a very lucrative company. He had posh offices. I wouldn't want to, you would have had to give me more money than God has if you wanted to extricate me from the life that Dan Lin's made for himself. So totally understand that. Safran was an easier get for Zaslav given that he had a first look deal already in place at Warner Brothers. Gunn and Safran will work closely with Casey Bloys, chairman and CEO of HBO and HBO Max Content, as well as Channing Dungry, chairman, Warner Brothers Television Group, Kathleen Finch, chairman and chief content officer, Us Networks Group, Pan Lifford, president, Warner Brothers Discovery Consumer Products, and David Haddad, president, Warner Brothers Interactive Entertainment. Zaslav is still looking for a new head of Warner Brothers Animation, the third feature bucket alongside Warner Brothers Motion Pictures and DC Studios that he outlined when taking on the new conglomerate. Development insiders at the studio are excited. The prospect of gearing up a writer's room under Gunn is a luring prospect for talent and scribes. In their new role, Gunn and Safran will spearhead the development and execution of long-term plans for many properties licensed from DC Comics, focused on continuing the tradition of DC storytelling across all mediums while building a sustainable growth business out of the franchise. Safran has been a linchpin for Warner's New Line theatrical between building The Conjuring to the biggest horror franchise ever at $2 billion worldwide, and shepherding DC's highest-grossing movie ever, Aquaman, at $1.1 billion, as well as Shazam and Gunn's The Suicide Squad, and HBO Max's live-action series Peacemaker. Also on the horizon from Safran's DC is Shazam! Fury of the Gods, Blue Beetle, and Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, Christmas 2023. Not produced by Safran, but definitely DC, is the Ezra Miller starring The Flash, set for June 23rd, 2023. DC has amongst the most entertaining, powerful, and iconic characters in the world, and I'm thrilled to have the singular and complementary talents of James and Peter joining our world-class team and overseeing the creative direction of the storied DC universe, Zaslav said today. Their decades of experience in filmmaking, close ties to the creative community, and proven track record thrilling superhero fans around the globe make them uniquely qualified to develop a long-term strategy across film, TV, and animation, and take this iconic franchise to the next level of creative storytelling. Added GUNN and Safran, we are honored to be the stewards of these DC characters we've loved since we were children. We look forward to collaborating with the most talented writers, directors, and actors in the world to create an integrated, multi-layered universe that still allows for individual expression of the artists involved. Our commitment to Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Harley Quinn, and the rest of the DC stable of characters is only equaled by our commitment to the wonder of human possibility these characters represent. We're excited to invigorate the theatrical experience around the world as we tell some of the biggest, most beautiful, and grandest stories ever told. We're especially enthusiastic about doing all of this with Mike, Pam, Casey Channing, and the whole Warner Brothers Discovery team, and we are grateful to David Zaslav, whose bold vision for the future of the franchise we share and allows for this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Most of all, we can't wait to bring you all into the story of the DC universe. DeLuca and Abdi said, we could not be more excited to have James Gunn and Peter Safran join the team and assume the leadership of the DC universe. James is a brilliant filmmaker and storyteller, and Peter is a tremendously successful and prolific producer, and to have them both committing to work together to forge this new era for DC is a literal dream come true. We all share a very similar sensibility and passion for this universe, and the stars couldn't have aligned any better. We can't wait to get started, dig in, and collaborate with these unmatched creative minds. So there you go, folks. I mean, this, I have to say, I didn't see this coming. Someone said on Twitter, Rob, you should have seen this coming. Like, I don't know what the machinations of the suits are in Hollywood. All I can say is that this is an amazing thing, that basically you have a filmmaker and a producer who is a veteran of the biggest DCEU projects at Warner Brothers, post Zack Snyder. You couldn't ask for a better group of guys to control the DCEU. What's even more exciting is James Gunn is a huge genre fan, a huge comic fan. He will do deep dives. I wouldn't be surprised to have a Kid Eternity movie greenlit, or a Shade the Changing Man greenlit. Half the Vertigo universe is probably on the table now. Things I never thought possible. We might actually see a revival of Swamp Thing. I don't know if that's the case. And I mean, I can see them being excited about doing the Constantine film with Keanu Reeves. The great thing about James Gunn is his brain. You now have a world-class filmmaker that's going to be able to make whatever the hell he wants, in addition to facilitating other filmmakers coming in and doing what they want to do. I can't imagine a better team of Safran and James Gunn to run DC, specifically DC and everything that entails. It's an amazing duo, and you wouldn't have ever got that with simply one executive like a Dan Lin overseeing this. To have James Gunn there with his mind and his knowledge of the wide breadth of DC materials, I mean, hell, they could make Amazing Man movie. Look up Amazing Man. I used to love Amazing Man. Heck, maybe my beloved Atari Force will one day see the light of day. Probably not. Don't worry. I'm not that crazy. But this is all very, very, very exciting. I find this whole thing quite nutty. Let me just jump in, and there's a few people that have sent in some super chats and some tips. And let me just go to that and catch up with you guys. Al Renshaw says, do you think James Gunn being in this position increases the chance we get a sequel to his Suicide Squad movie? Maybe it was a part of him taking the job. Perhaps. I mean, if he wants to. The problem is, even from a business perspective, the Suicide Squad did not make the kind of money it should have. It wasn't his fault. I would imagine that we might see the the shows more like Peacemaker being developed, but maybe with more success of perhaps individual members of the Suicide Squad, they might come back and do another film. Maybe the numbers on HBO Max would justify making a film, another Suicide Squad movie. I wouldn't bet on it right away. I would imagine that James Gunn would want to do something new and unique, but who's to say? Not really sure. DL says, new epic rap battle of history dropped, Croft versus Jones. I hope one day you check them out. Great geeks making great content. Love the show, buddy. I've always loved rap battles throughout history. They're great videos. I've watched them for a long time. Some old guy in Hollywood, some old guy in Hawaii. Hello, man. How's it going? You and James Gunn have the same beard. Couldn't you run DC Studios? Well, unfortunately, I don't have James Gunn's. I mean, I've directed one movie no one's ever heard of that's out of print. And I have produced some things, but although I was a producer on a James Gunn movie that he wrote and starred in. Who knows? I've always liked James Gunn. I've always been friendly with James Gunn. You know, I used to see a lot more of him in the aughts, in the early 2000s that I did. I used to go to lots of parties and things like that, but I don't have his experience. And I certainly have not directed the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise for Marvel that was very successful and has grossed over $1 billion now. So I couldn't run DC Studios. You know, maybe I could be someone's major domo, or I could be their Peter Bart to, you know, to somebody. I don't know. You know, but it's nice of you to say. Harry Katsaros sends in a tip and says, love that very talented writers like Gunn is in charge of overall creative. Hopefully means no more half-baked scripts like Black Adam, making it through the cracks under his watch. Fun movie, horrible script. Oh no, we're going to see, I would imagine that James Gunn, remember James Gunn has produced movies as well, like the Belko Experiment. I think we're going to see a lot of innovation, and it would not surprise me. About 15 years ago, I had proposed, when I was producing The Hills Run Red, doing a series of lower budget DC movies. I wanted to do Grant Morrison's Animal Man as the first of those, where you would make lower budget DC films that would delve into their lesser known characters. Animal Man was the one that I wanted to do, the beginnings all the way up to through the Coyote Gospel storyline. You know, I wanted to do more Vertigo titles and things, and I had presented it, but it didn't go very far. It didn't go anywhere, and unfortunately, Warner Brothers, Warner Premiere, the company that I had produced Hills Run Red for, decided not to continue on in the direct-to-video market outside of DC animation, which was too bad, because that's what I was hoping to do, was make 10 million or less versions of DC movies that would be done by up-and-coming talented filmmakers, but you didn't have to break the bank, and they would be used as both an incubator for new talent and as a way to explore the lesser-known regions of the DC universe. But it never happened, which is too bad. RRTNZ says, both terrified and elated. The potential here to raise the DC universe to levels never seen before. The terror comes from that level of expectation. Hey, honestly, you're not wrong. But I'll tell you something. Remember, this team, Peter Safran already has Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom coming out. He has Shazam! Fury of the Gods coming out. And I bet your bottom dollar that Dwayne Johnson, if they're going to do Black Adam moving forward, I'm sure they are, and Henry Cavill's Superman, I mean, I'm sure James Gunn and Peter Safran are huge proponents of this. So I think this is very exciting for DC. I think they're going to announce a comprehensive plan. It's not like both of them haven't been thinking about doing what they could have done, because they've both made movies. Both James Gunn and Peter Safran have made movies for Warner and DC. There's no other, I used to think there was no one else like Kevin Feige, and there isn't. But I'll tell you something, there's nobody like this duo in Hollywood either. I think Warner Brothers has just become a great place to make movies, at least if you're working in DC. And I hope that they figure out a way to make more movies like Joker, $65 million and even less movies that they can delve into. I mean, on a $65 million spend, not everything's going to make $1 billion, but it's pretty exciting that you have a guy like James Gunn who comes out of the indie film world that realizes that a Kid Eternity movie, I'm not saying, by the way, they're going to make a Kid Eternity movie. I just like Kid Eternity. I would love it if they did make a Kid Eternity movie and they make that for $45 million. And they look to shoot toward theatrical releases. They get talented people that really know what they're doing and can make great films. So I think it's very exciting. Glenn Mark, our friend Glenn Mark says, been waiting for you to tell me, Glenn Mark, you and I park our shuttlecrafts in the same shuttle bay. 2 weeks ago, it came out of Chris's mouth. Did you hear about this? I did not. Someone takes my catchphrases. Chris took, if I didn't love Chris so much, I'd whap her upside the head. How could she be using my catchphrase? But I know, I trust Chris. I know she has my back. And if she uses my catchphrase, there'd be a damn good reason. Lando says, do you think we can finally get a Green Arrow movie? And do you think we can get more DC street-level hero movies who fight crime like Batman? Maybe, but, what I would like to see is I would like to see DC figures that don't just fight crime at the street level. That's why I'd like to see Shade the Changing Man. That's why I'd like to see Kid Eternity. I'd like to see a lot of those DC properties. Look, I'm going to get to this in a minute when we talk about the James Cameron story. But I think what we need to do is, with DC, they have a very broad base of different kinds of characters. And I'd like to see them really do deep dives. I mean, I think James Gunn proved with Suicide Squad that he went deep into the DC archives. And that's not to say the joys of street-level heroes. Look, I would love to see the Mike Grell run of Green Arrow. I have much of it right up there. The Longbow Hunters, and set it in my hometown of Seattle. Love to see that. Don't know if that'll happen, but I'd love to see that Grell run of Green Arrow. I mean, the show, the problem is we've already had an Arrow show. I'd like to see something different, but I do love Green Arrow. Kevin Rubio says, can't wait for James Gunn to direct the Thomas Wayne story starring Billy Bob Thornton. Well, Kevin, I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but it certainly could. That would be interesting. Cam's Cam Crash Course has been a member for 19 months. Well, thanks, Cam. I really appreciate that. Remember, we had a membership chat last week. We have, if you're a member of the channel, we have bi-weekly membership chats. They last for 3 or 4 hours usually, and we just hang out and shoot the shit. So that's really great. And thanks for being members, all of you. Fry Minis says, when are you coming to Dallas so I can get you a bourbon and some beef? Well, I'd love to go. I love Dallas. I had a film at the USA Film Festival there. I don't know if they still do it, but we had a bang-up time. Although a woman did throw a program at me and said I made the most offensive movie she'd ever seen. But I don't hold anything, any people that live in Dallas or the city itself. So I'd love to come to Dallas. Fry Minis. How is Ray doing? He's doing better. He's home now. Hopefully he's on the mend. He's going to be in pain for a while, but as he is healing. But thank God they were able to avert the worst. Glenn Mark goes on to say, regarding my comment, bring Johnny Depp into the MCU playing himself as Elsa Bloodstone's concubine. See Girls Comics Limited Series 2010. Well, maybe, but Elsa Bloodstone is now, that would be the wrong universe. Jacob Kirk says, I've written a beautiful Superman Man of Steel 2 script. I would love to show you. How would I begin to get anyone's attention in the industry? I've written some successful graphic novels, but that's it. Well, here's the thing. Anybody, you can't really get to write a franchise picture is not really the way to get people's attention in the industry. What you really need to do is get produced and write a small film. Write a movie that you can either go out and direct yourself, or you can write for a filmmaker or submit to the blacklist and you have to write a fiercely original script, not a Superman Man of Steel 2 script, because no one will take you seriously if you try and get it made. That said, I don't want to discourage you, because having any kind of writing samples could somehow be useful at some point. But in order to really get in and I'm not saying that crazier things have happened, but if you really want to get noticed, you've got to start, I think, small. Write a great script that is, I have to tell you, and I don't mean to be critical, but I watched Apple's Raymond and Ray with Ethan Hawke, Handsome Hawk, and Ewan McGregor. It was on Apple Plus. I thought it was absolutely terrible. Really bad. So write a script that's better than that. I understand where the writer's heart was, but there's more time, more chances than ever you can get something made and produced at a lower budget, and to get it seen. And also, if you've written some successful graphic novels, that gets you a leg up as well. But because if you've got samples that people love seeing, that graphic novels especially, that could lead somewhere. Alan Ling says, "Hey Rob, I highly doubt this, but should Disney and Marvel Studios be worried about this news? I don't think so. Not at all. Kevin is great at what he does. James and Peter will do their own thing. Each of them will succeed." Absolutely. Look, everybody in the industry that continues to work together, James Gunn, and as a matter of fact, I am sure James Gunn had long conversations with Kevin Feige about this, making sure it was okay with him. I mean, in a way, it's kind of a great thing. James Gunn, remember, after, and let's face it, Warner Brothers threw James Gunn a lifeline when James had some troubles and basically was dismissed from Disney. Luckily, he came back. But Warner Brothers was there for James Gunn and let him make Suicide Squad and Peacemaker. So, and, good on Marvel as well. And there's no reason to think people have long-standing relationships. I don't think that there's any kind of bitterness between Marvel or Kevin Feige and James Gunn. I think they're probably still the best of friends. They would work together in an instant, and I'm sure that Kevin Feige was the first person to say, "James, buddy, this is an opportunity. You go take it." And remember, Kevin Feige used to work for Richard Donner. And when I was at Warner Brothers, Richard Donner and Joel Silver's office, the doors to each of their offices faced each other. And so Kevin Feige's, his roots are at Warner Brothers too. So I'm sure he didn't have a problem. Of course, I could be wrong there too. I do not know. Far Cash Money says, "I feel like James Gunn might direct the next Man of Steel." Interesting, isn't it? Interesting that Henry Cavill was saying yesterday that Superman is back, baby. I could absolutely see that part of this announcement is that James Gunn is going to direct Superman. It would not surprise me. Again, I don't know anything about it, whether he is or not, but it would not surprise me that the way to plant a flag, because once you make a successful Superman movie, Henry Cavill's there, you've got The Rock on your side, and something tells me that James Gunn really probably likes Dwayne Johnson. So there's all kinds of things swirling around. I'll tell you one thing. I feel like there's been a game, a great game of strategy that's been played by all involved, and other people that I'm sure are very happy about this are James Wan and anybody that's in that periphery, because these are people that are a lot more successful creatively than, say, the J.J. Abrams camp, who they're still dealing with, over at Disney. So good for them. I think Warner Brothers has just bought themselves the next exciting 10 years of movies to make. So it's pretty exciting. I think it's pretty exciting. Zarp says, "Chances of Gunn getting a Marvel versus DC movie made." I don't know about the possibilities of that happening, mostly because of things like shareholders. I mean, it would be incredible. And I think if anybody could do it, James Gunn would be the man to do it. I just don't know if they would want to do something like that yet. But who knows? I mean, it would be... Can you imagine an Avengers versus Justice League movie? I can, because I have the George Perez drawn hardcover right down there. But I don't know if they could do, I don't even know what would the budget of something like that be. I don't even know, but it would be pretty amazing. Garen Gillum says, do you think this will affect DC Comics, which has struggled in the last few years besides the Batman books? Although Jeff Johns is coming back to write JSA, which is a big positive in my view. I really loved, again, I've got his hardcovers. I love Jeff Johns' JSA. I'm a fan of Jeff Johns as a comic writer for the most part. There's been things I didn't like Doomsday Clock, but it's nice to see him come back to do comics. Again, Jeff Johns and Kevin Feige worked together at Donner's from what I remember. Look, I think that the superhero comics market has been struggling for a reason. I think when we're getting all of these comic book properties on the big screen, I think it is completely overshadowed. Look, I love comic books. I've always loved comic books. I've loved comic books since I was a kid. But, comic books were something that we started reading when we were kids, and it stuck with us. I think superheroes in other medium, whether it's video games, whether it's animation, and whether it's live action on the big screen, has supplanted the ability to do effective superhero comics. We just don't have the market that we used to. And also, it doesn't help that the DNA of many of our heroes is now sort of frowned upon. That I understand, I really appreciate the creators trying to have more voices, more marginalized voices come into the comic book world, but I don't necessarily think that's great for those heroes. I think they should be creating new characters that reflect today's age. I know it's harder, but a lot of these characters, I mean, you're looking at characters that were created in the 30s and the 40s, and they have a certain expectation from a long-time audience. And when you try and turn those characters into characters that more reflect the place that we're at now, I don't think it serves the characters, and I don't think it serves the subject matter well. I think what should be happening is there should be all kinds of new and diverse characters created by modern creators. That's the great thing about modern creators, is they should be adding to the art form, not necessarily changing what has come before into something else. I think that's been the greatest problem with our longtime franchises. Doctor Who, Star Trek, Star Wars. I mean, even Star Wars is 45 years old now. Star Trek is 56 years old. Doctor Who is going to be 60 next year. James Bond is already 60. And yet everybody wants to change these characters and turn them into characters that reflect our politics or our whatever identity politics of today. And I think that does a disservice to the characters, to the longtime audience. We need creators of today creating new characters, new creations. That's what I want to see. I think that's what the audience wants to see. I want to see great, new, vibrant characters that we have yet to meet that are reflections of the voices that we're seeing today, creating characters. Wouldn't that be better? Don't you? I mean, when I was growing up, one of the great things about the comic creators, sure, you had the big Marvel and DC comics, but you also had, I found characters like Reuben Flagg, American Flag. I found my way to Howard Chaykin's non-DC and Marvel work. Characters like Matt Wagner's Grendel or Mage. There was some really interesting creative stuff going on in the 80s where you had all these indie creators creating their own fiercely original characters. And we need to see more of that. Unfortunately, the industry is in a bit of a depressed place. I'd like to see it get picked up, but I don't know if that'll happen. Comic Boom says James Gunn loves Margot Robbie and he expressed a desire for another Harley Quinn movie. If he explores it, at least it won't be a musical. I disagree. I think the first person that would make a Harley Quinn musical would be James Gunn. James Gunn has a really off-the-wall sensibility. And while he understands the classical nature of a lot of the DC heroes, remember, he worked for Troma. James Gunn is capable of anything, and I'm there for it. I give you the opening credits of Peacemaker. Don't think he won't make a musical. It might be more Hedwig and the Angry Inch than, say, Grease. But hey, I wouldn't put it past him, and I'd be there for it. El Necron says, is Black Adam a metal movie? Black Adam is a movie that wants to be metal but isn't. Again, the greatest metal superhero film ever made, fucking metal, is Zack Snyder's Justice League. You know why. You know exactly why. Fan Art Exhibit says there's no real push now from indie creators like Critical Drinker, Shadowversity, and Bat in the Sun to take their IPs to lofty heights. What do you think of their chances of gaining bigger traction? It's great. I mean, I know that Critical Drinker is he wants to make a short film of his own character. That's the way to go. I mean, creators taking their own projects and turning them into something, that's the way to go for anybody. They take their own IPs. In this day and age I mean, look at Critical Drinker. He's got over a million subscribers. And look at what Brandon Sanderson did with his books. $40 million after he wrote 4 books during the pandemic. Brandon Sanderson, now he's got his own miniatures that he's making. That's the way to go. Creators selling directly to consumers, what Eric July did. You know, the Ripaverse, awesome. That's the way to go. And when you've cultivated a global audience, you can sell directly to the consumer and make decent money, support your own IP and make money. That's the way to go. And you know what? Who knows? That's when a studio might come along and give you the kind of money. Who knows? Maybe the Ripaverse might join the Milestone universe over at DC. I wouldn't be surprised if we're going to see more of that at all. You know, I would love to see Isom and Icon team them up. You never know. So I think Fan Art Exhibit, I mean, anytime a creator can make their own IP and get it out to their own viewers direct to consumer, that's the dream. That is the dream. Tom Jr. Jackson says, just saying hi and showing support. Well, Tom, you of course are the great, you created the term, we are all goof people. And, you know, we all are goof people. So thanks for the support. DJ Jerry Nice sends in a super sticker. Thank you. I don't know. He just says hiya. Well, thanks for that. I appreciate that. Very nice of you. Nay says, Gun like, keep going, Matt. You're doing good. Todd Phillips, you got Joker covered. I'll try and fix Aquaman and let me worry about Superman. I don't think Aquaman needs fixing. The last Aquaman made $1 billion. James Wan's got that. Peter Safran's got James Wan's back. I can't wait. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you something. This has reinvigorated my enthusiasm. Look, I would love to see Ben Affleck come back and make his Batman versus Terminator Deathstroke movie. Oh, what I would give to see that. So yeah, I think DC has got a really, really bright future. And I'll tell you something. It's going to be much more creatively vibrant than the MCU. I'm not saying that I love the MCU, but even I have to admit, as much as I want to see Kang and Quantum Mania and all that, I feel that the Phase 4, I love the first 23 movies of the Infinity Saga, even the ones that are lesser. You go back and you watch Iron Man 2, pretty good. I enjoy it. I liked Captain Marvel. Is it great? No. I enjoyed it. I'll tell you what I am excited about, as I've told you, Secret Invasion. I've read the scripts. If they pull it off, it's going to give you some flavor back to the old Captain America, the Winter Soldier days. That's all I'm telling you. And in your estimation, I bet Captain Marvel will rise a little bit. I really enjoyed it. At least I enjoyed the scripts. We shall see what happens. Nay goes on also to say, when they said Gunn had a couple secret DC projects, well, he has the whole thing now. Yes, he did have a couple of DC projects, and now he's got them. So there you go. Quadruple Chin says, Rob, in my opinion, Paramount have redeemed themselves from Disco seasons 1 through 3 and the trash that is Picard via the greatness of Lower Decks seasons 2 and 3, and of course, Strange New Worlds and Prodigy. Your thoughts? I'm not going to go with you there. Lower Decks, I read a really interesting article from my friend David Miller, a letter that I'm actually going to post as an individual video. And Lower Decks is fine, but it's fine. Again, and Prodigy's fine. And Strange New Worlds, I'm not a believer in Strange New Worlds. I wish it was more of an ensemble show than it is. It's hot captain and his hot bevy of ladies traveling the galaxy. I don't like a lot of what they've done in Strange New Worlds. I don't like how they have liberally borrowed from people like Ursula K. Le Guin and her story, Those Who Walk Away from Umlaus. I hate the fact that they took the backstory for Rebecca Romijn's character, Una, from a Dorothy Fontana Star Trek novel without crediting her. They don't necessarily have to do that. And I couldn't stand the final episode of the first season where they revisited Balance of Terror and did it badly. I understand that everyone loves it and all that, but you're not going to get me. The fact that they ruined the relationship between the Romulan commander and his Centurion showed a complete lack of understanding of what made that episode great. But whatever, we'll see. You know what has redeemed the universe? Star Trek Picard Season 3. And I hated Star Trek Picard Season 2. And 1, to be honest. As people know, I have seen all of Star Trek Picard Season 3 twice all the way through. And I love it. It's definitely a return to form for the franchise. And I think the creative teams at currently that are in control of the Star Trek franchise are not the right people for Star Trek, which is unfortunate. Sorry that Tallulah is barking. I've fed her, but Elizabeth is not home, and she wants me to open the door for her. Maybe I'll have to if she doesn't shut up. Parth Trivedi says, I dumped all of Rotten Tomatoes ratings of Kevin Feige movies into Excel, and while I do agree the quality of Marvel hasn't been the best, it's not dipped, and rather it's been flat over the last few outings. Look, my problem is that I like Shang-Chi because it was the the wuxia genre. It delved into that, and I liked No Way Home. But I just feel that, like, when I saw Captain America: The Winter Soldier, I'm like, this movie kicks ass. And when I watched Thor: Love and Thunder, I'm like, this is completely unbalanced. I thought it could have been a great film. I hated all the humor. I'm really looking forward to Wakanda Forever. Hopefully that'll be the end of Phase 4 in grand fashion. I just feel that Phase 4 hasn't had any standout movies, and that's bummed me out. I will say this. I really, really like the scripts for Secret Invasion. I really like what they're doing in that series. If they pull it off, it has a really interesting story, and it has a really interesting central conflict that I thought was both, it spoke to world events now, and it's completely fascinating, and it is more along the lines tonally of Winter Soldier, and I really liked it. It's really surprising. So I'm really looking forward to that. But that's interesting, Parth. Parth says, what are your thoughts on how the comic book movies have impacted comic book sales? Have you noticed any trends firsthand? To be honest, I have sort of I bought comic books. I went to the comic book store every week for 30 years. And I really sort of got out of it. I promised myself when Neil Gaiman's Sandman ended, I would quit. But I kept going back, and things like House of X and Power of X or Power of 10, Hickman's run on X-Men brought me back. I thought it was really interesting in terms of superhero stuff. There's a lot of indie things I've been buying, like Amy Dallin got me into The Wicked and the Divine. I bought Paper Girls when it came out, which is now turned into a series. There's a lot of stuff like Berlin and Local, and there's a lot of indie stuff that I've bought. But I think that I really do believe that the success of the comic book movie has been detrimental to the superhero comic book industry, because you're not getting it's the success of these movies is not translating to comic book buyers. And I think the comic creators wanting to inject more of their own, I mean, there's always been personal politics injected into comics, but when you have characters that were created in a different time and you're trying to inject more identity politics into the comics, it doesn't help classic characters. I think comic creators should be creating their own new comics, creating their own stuff, and they should be doing comics that more reflect their own personalities and create characters that reflect their own personalities. And I don't think they're doing that. I think about all the vibrant creator-owned, and that's not to say there is a lot of great comic books being created now. Really cool stuff. And there are studios like Boom Studios that are doing some great stuff. But I think that Marvel and DC are kind of lacking because the core, what brought readers into those comic books has sort of been lost. But then again, to be honest, I'm not the best person to opine on it because I haven't kept up with it. Although I do go by, give me a new Absolute version. And like with Chris Carr and the Weekly Hero, it's been so much fun delving into, we did Long Halloween. It was great going back to read my Absolute version of that. And a lot of those classic comics I miss. We talked about Arkham Asylum. Again, but that came out in 1989. Although they did announce that there is an Arkham. They're moving forward with an Arkham Asylum series. That was announced today too, which has been sort of lost in all of the news. We'll probably deal with that tomorrow on the John Campea Show. Parth goes on to say, also, hello, sir, and hope you're doing well. Well, Parth, thanks for supporting the channel. I am doing pretty well. It's pretty exciting times to live in. Pretty good. RRTNZ says, James Gunn's Green Lantern Corps, buy a bag to put the money in. James Gunn's Superman, hope he minds more of the 80s Byrne revival stories. Cheers, mate. Look, I think that James Gunn would make a very fun Superman movie. And you know what? If I was James Gunn, why not make Superman? You can go back and do anything you want, but if you ran DC, why not? Why not just go for broke and do Superman? I wouldn't be surprised if they announced that tomorrow. Is Gunn kind of perfect to oversee Green Lantern, says DJ Jerry Nice? I think he is. All the different kinds of aliens. I mean, James Gunn, if he had made... Martin Campbell might not have been the best director for Ryan Reynolds' Green Lantern. You know who would have been? James Gunn. He would have taken Ryan Reynolds' humor and worked it into the story of the Guardians and Oa, and he wouldn't have used that lame fucking Parallax as the villain. He would have made a good movie out of it. Quadruple Chin says, Rob, thank you for that very nuanced and educated take on Trek. DS9 and TNG are still the gold standard for me. Me too. Well, the original series is the gold standard for me, but I love TNG. Got some tips as well. Let's go back to Alan Renshaw sends in a tip and says, do you think this hurts the chances of more Superman movies with Cavill? I find it very hard to believe that he would do that, but I wouldn't put it past him either. No, I think that if anything, I think James Gunn would leap. Look, James Gunn is not just a filmmaker. He's also a big geek. I can only imagine that James Gunn loves Henry Cavill as Superman, and James Gunn also realizes the difficulty of finding an actor to embody that role. And you know what? Henry Cavill has never had a movie where he could just be Superman. He was a newly minted Man of Steel in Zack Snyder's Man of Steel. He was fighting Batman, pitted against Batman in Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. And then, of course, he died and comes back in Justice League and has to find who he is again. There's never been a Superman movie with Henry Cavill being Superman. And you know what? I think James Gunn would be the first person to tell you that, and he would probably jump right in, I think. So I'm excited. The Goddess of Horror sends in a tip and says, Rob, what did you think when you heard Campea was bringing Harloff onto his show to work with you, since he had unceremoniously let you go from the Schmodown? I bet that first meeting was awkward. I guess water under the bridge now? That's a good question. First of all, a lot of people ask me that. I've always liked Christian Harloff and Mark Ellis. I've always liked them. And they had built the Schmodown up, and what people don't really realize is there was a company overseeing the Schmodown. And what went down between RB3 and all of that, all of those things was unfortunate, but Mark and Christian were sort of hamstrung in terms of me by the fact that a company was now overseeing the Schmodown. So it wasn't just them. So they had to let me go because that the company that was overseeing the Schmodown couldn't have any of those shenanigans, and nor would I have wanted them to. For me, I wasn't upset with Christian and Mark. What upset me was that people that I worked with, I mean, I tweeted 100,000 times and they get upset for one tweet. I mean, sometimes I have a dark, sardonic sense of humor. But in the case of this, I was really angry. And, you know, I had tweeted a response to a video of a man lying dead on the sidewalk. And my tweet was angry, but it was meant to be taken in a dark, ironic way. And the fact that my tweet was taken away and taken away from the retweet of the video out of its context and used against me by people I work with, that was shameful. That was shameful. And if someone had a problem with it, by the way, you know who had a problem with it? John Campia. He called me up and he said, within 30 minutes, he goes, you know, Rob, I don't think people are going to get that tweet, and maybe you should apologize for it. So I had already apologized for that tweet based on what John Campion said, because I was angry. I didn't really think about it, you know, because you tweet and you let it go. But it was John Campion who called me, and I'd already made a video apology for that tweet before I was even they tried to cancel me, which was really upsetting that nobody bothered. People I'd work with and people I liked, you know, calling me a trash person. I mean, what the hell was that about? When was I ever mean to any of those people? The answer would be never. Never was. So it wasn't Christian. Again, I've always liked Christian. And by the way, you know, after John Schnepp died and a lot of craziness was going on, Christian always reached out to me. And we've always had a very good relationship. And I've always liked Christian. And John did ask me before this all went down, he's like, would you have a problem with Christian coming on the show? So I have to say, both Christian and John Campia have always been stand-up people in terms of reaching out to me and talking to me. So a lot of people might not know that, but it's absolutely true. And I really respect what Christian and Mark was. Look, I think Mark is a really talented comedian. Always liked him. He's always been really funny. I'm sure he's never expressed it to me, but there are things I did that probably pissed Mark off. But, you know, I was playing a part that Christian, I mean, I didn't know what a heel was. I didn't understand a heel. I mean, I knew the concept of what it meant to be a heel, but I didn't know who Ric Flair was when I first started on the Schmodown. So, the Word Balloon Podcast, John Suntress. If you don't listen to the Word Balloon Podcast, John Suntress has years of his great podcast with many great comic creators. You guys want to know about the current state of the comic industry? There's no better place to go than the Word Balloon Podcast. John says, yo, buddy, this is great DC news. The only other guys I thought capable of doing this were Mark Guggenheim and Greg Berlanti, given their CW TV Arrowverse ideas without the BS network headaches that kept them from getting bolder. I think that's true, but they've never commanded a $200 million budget for one project. But we might be able to see them. Roberto Suarez, our friend Roberto, by the way, if you were here since the beginning of the show, the Latin X-Men, Alex Montano and Roberto Suarez's new show in all Spanish, or as they say, 97% Spanish, is going to be dropping, I hope, this weekend. The first episode, it's going to be on the Post-Geek Singularity channel. It joins RM's ladies of the Post-Geek Singularity show. Hopefully, if I can get the lovely Emma Bannon to do a show and other people to do shows, that will be some of the goal of what the Post-Geek Singularity was all about. And by the way, kudos to Alex and Roberto for coming up with the name Latin X-Men. I know there was an animated Latin X-Men, but I love that they're taking back that term. I've already had people say, you know, Rob, you shouldn't call it the Latin X-Men or Latinx Men. I'm like, okay, you tell a Puerto Rican and a Mexican living in Colombia they can't call their show Latin X-Men. I love the fact that they did. So, Roberto, good on you. I do not think James Gunn will be too busy. I think the point is, he will be, as a matter of fact, I think his movies will be leading the charge. I absolutely do. I absolutely do think he's going to be leading the charge, and they want him to direct movies and at the same time be a creative force. And, you know, you can do it all. Our friend Superhero Displays says, I was worried. By the way, Superhero Displays, I I'm looking at my Michael Burnham figure right now. Superhero Displays says, I was worried for Peacemaker when the new regime took over, given the axe was being wielded without mercy for so much DCEU and adjacent, the CW, etc. But with the news on GUNN being in charge of all of the DCEU, it looks surely safe. I think it absolutely will be safe. I think it is going to be an embarrassment of riches for all of us. My man Nick Parrish is here. Says, what's up, Rob? I must say today is a joyous day. James Gunn, after a long, well-respected career as a filmmaker, now sits on the throne of Kandak. You know, I always think of that as being the place where the Evil Dead are from. And has been crowned Emperor Supreme of DC. All hail Overlord Zaslav for this move, and all hail King Gunn. I can't think of better news. Nick Parrish goes on to say, Rob, if you like the Paper Girls comic, which I did, please watch the live-action show on Prime. I thought the show was very good, and it's a shame the show was canceled after one season. That's why I don't watch many series, but Paper Girls is still worth a watch. I did watch some of it. I haven't watched all of it, but that show was not even publicized. That is a terrific comic book, and the show is really good. And again, no one knew anything about this show. And the biggest danger, it kills me when you get great IP like Paper Girls, it gets turned into a series, it gets canceled after a season, and that effectively kills the viability of Paper Girls as an IP that you can expand somewhere else. So, yeah, well, there you go. It was kind of a bummer. So let's see. RRTNZ says, Bob, Critical Drinker posts excerpts of his best rants. Your soliloquy about comics from a few minutes ago totally encapsulated the identity crisis in modern comics. Post it, mate. Yeah, I mean, I didn't even think about that. I might do that. I have been thinking about clipping out things. I mean, look, as people know, when it comes to my whole idea of what I love is I love hearing new stories from new voices that I have never heard before. And I like hearing the tales, and I'll tell you, whether it's people that have had a voice or not, hearing stories of marginalized people who have never had a voice before, I am all for that. I love all that. What I don't like is when people lead not with the stories they're telling, but they lead with they believe that we all need to have messages that they're somehow they can give to us, like they're bringing down, I don't know, the slabs from the mountain. You know, they're bringing back the commandments that we're supposed to listen to. All of my favorite stories when I was growing up were stories where the message was built into the DNA of the tale. And first and foremost, when I was a kid, it was The Twilight Zone and classic Star Trek. Those stories always had messages. They always had things that they wanted to impart to the audience. But the thing that they did was, look, everyone points to Star Trek's episode, Let That Be Your Last Battlefield, where there were characters from Charon. People were either white on one side and black on the other, or black on one side and white on the other. And it was the most heavy-handed message about racism you could possibly imagine. That was not Star Trek's finest hour. It's not a bad episode, though. No one wants to be preached to. But the best episodes of Star Trek had an inherent message that it gave you something to mull over, to think about. So did the great Twilight Zone episodes. Some of the Twilight Zone episodes also were very heavy-handed. But they were able to give us messages and tell us, in a way, fables. They gave you, and it just seems so cliche to say it again, but stories should give you something to think about, to mull over. They shouldn't tell you what to think. And there's a big difference. And the great stories and the great storytellers always give you lots of things to think about. And it's up to you to sort of discern what the message is. And that's why I love stories. And that's what I want to hear. I want to hear great stories. I really do. Tell me a great story. And I will listen, and I don't care who tells it to me. I don't care what color you are. I don't care what your sexual orientation is. I don't care what your politics are. I really don't. But if you tell me a great story, I will listen to it. And that's what I want. And there are a lot of people that have never had the ability or never had the platform to tell their stories. And I think that if their stories are great and they tell me something, they tell me a tale I've never heard before, I'm the first person to say yes. But don't tell me what I am supposed to think. So that's what I don't like. And I've been saying that on the show for the last 4 years. Anyway, but maybe I'll do that, RRTNZ. Binary Sunset Media says, the thing about James Gunn is he's not afraid to utilize the lesser-known characters. I know. Who would have thought King Shark? Not only does he put King Shark in a movie, Sylvester Stallone voices King Shark. I mean, oh my God. And you like him. You like King Shark. Aaron Jones says, very excited to see James Gunn take over for DC Studios. What I've craved the most for this brand is someone who not only tells a great story, but is also a great director. It's a very exciting future for DC. Of course, I mean, David Zaslav, I'm sure it was not lost on him that I think James Gunn, like they said, like Pixar, the directors at Pixar, of the Pixar films also were, a lot of them are very instrumental in running that business as well. It was very synergistic, and I think that's what they want from DC, and I think we're going to see that. Aaron Jones says, Mark Spector's avatar says, I'm just going to say it, Clark Wolf is the worst. Look, I haven't had any great dealings with Clark Wolf in my life, but she's just trying to get by like everybody else. You know, I had one run-in with her over Twitter, which I didn't understand that she jumped into. And to be fair, I didn't know Clark Wolf very well. And I made a comment on Twitter. I go, whoa, easy, Cheetah. You know, and I've been saying that since college to anybody, not just to girls, to guys, to my mom. You know, whenever somebody gets mad, I'm like, yo, easy, Cheetah, meaning don't tear my throat out. You jungle cat, you. But she took it the wrong way and was mad. But I didn't understand, you know, that she dealt with a lot of online abuse from people herself. So, you know, I was trying to look. They're always try and look at the other side of the story and why people are who they are, because I think that gives you, first of all, a lot of insight to make decisions in your own life, because you know you try and figure out what other people are going to do. But everyone's had things going on in their lives that you don't know. And you try and cut them some slack. So anyway, Jordan Saylor has been a member of the channel for 5 months. I absolutely hated Werewolf by Night, a dumbed-down hour show to shock. I was hooked on the comic in 1972, mostly because of the writing. The casting was horrible. The only bright spot was Man-Thing. I got to disagree with you. I thought it was fun for what it was. You know, I liked the casting. I mean, yeah, was it like the comic? No, it was a little different. But I liked the scenario that they gave us. And I thought it was a fun romp for Halloween. And I have to say that the Guardians of the Galaxy special looks pretty fun. But yeah, I can understand. Look, I loved Werewolf by Night. I started reading it. I actually went back. I did not read Werewolf by Night in 75. I found it later because of Moon Knight, and I went back and read it. But I really like Werewolf by Night. I like the 70s, man. I liked Tomb of Dracula. I liked Werewolf by Night. I liked the Marvel horror comics of the 70s. They were pretty good. Same with DC. You know, I loved House of Mystery and House of Secrets. You know, I loved all that shit. It was great. Okay. Shola Onifade. I hope I got that right. What a cool name. Shola Onifade. Is that a real name? That's a great name. Is being a critic toxic? What's wrong with criticism? I don't think being a critic's toxic at all. It really depends how you criticize. I mean, here's what I miss. Like, I grew up reading a lot of the great, like Pauline Kael. Sometimes I totally disagreed with her reviews, but I really liked her reviews. Roger Ebert. I think the problem with criticism now is if you read criticism of movies, especially in the 60s and 70s, movies and the movies that we watched were considered, I think, not all of them, but the explosion of foreign films that we got in, the Italian neorealist films, the French New Wave, movies were really considered to be an art form. While the Hollywood studios were sort of dying in the 60s, there was a lot of stuff coming out that was really exciting from foreign lands, from France, from Italy. A lot of really exciting stuff going on. even Spain and India. There was a lot of really exciting movies, and there was a lot of criticism that was going on. And the critics, the film critics, a lot of them were very well read. They were fans of art, meaning fine art, and they were fans of the performing arts, theater, ballet, symphonies. So when they were reviewing things, they brought their critical acumen that had a lot of education behind it. Not everybody, but a lot of them did. A lot of them, like if you go back and you read the French Cahiers du Cinéma, and you read what some of the André Bazin and you go back and you read a lot of the French critics that later became like Truffaut, Godard, that later became filmmakers in their own right. I mean, these guys were true artists. And I think the problem with criticism now is people know a lot less than they used to. At least maybe that's just me thinking the olden days were better. But they know a lot less now. And I have to say, most of the people, and this is not meant to be a criticism of people. I'm not condemning anyone. But people know a lot less about movies now than they used to. People watch a lot less diverse. And when I say diverse, I mean the kinds of movies. I'm actually kind of shocked how few movies people have actually seen. Oh, sure, everyone can tell you about Spielberg and comedies and that, but foreign films? I mean, to me, it's crazy how few movies people that say that they're huge film fans have actually seen. But remember, that's the film snob in me coming out. I grew up going to the Seattle International Film Festival. I watched movies from all around the world. I didn't make any distinction about where movies came from. But of course, I also went to film school. And when you go to film school and you're studying, whether it's silent films, like people who haven't seen Sunrise, one of the great silent films, it still has one of that walking into your own POV shot that still blows me away. And it was shot, in the 1920s. So I think that film criticism today is a lot less educated than it used to be. And that is, look, it's just a fact. People haven't seen the diversity of films that are available to watch. And, if you go back and you look at, and I'm going to get to this because I wanted to talk about this with the second part of the show, which is what James Cameron said. But I don't think that there's anything wrong with criticism as long as the criticism, like anything else, is constructive. I can't stand it when it goes like, that movie sucked. My question is, well, why? Why did it suck? What about it sucked? If you can't articulate why, and by the way, when someone says a movie sucked, they're usually probably right. But what I want them to do is be able to tell me why. Can you articulate why a movie sucked? I think that's important. You should understand why you like what you like. And then again, who cares if you can or can't? You're not obligated. If you're not a professional critic and you want to say that something sucked, but I think any understanding your own opinions and why you have them. And that's why I've never understood people like, well, I don't want to talk about politics or anything like that. I get why people don't want to talk about those things, but I think it's really important to understand your own beliefs. I've always thought that, you should never be scared to talk about or worry about talking about things that you believe to anyone. I think talking and challenging your own beliefs helps you understand what you believe that much more. It can only be beneficial. So yeah. Logan Landis says, what are your thoughts on Last of the Mohicans? One of my favorite movies since I was a child. I showed my wife recently and she loved it. You know what's funny about that, Logan? I got to tell you, first of all, I'm a huge Michael Mann fan. Last of the Mohicans fucking rules. And I don't know why, but last night, you know how YouTube just suggests videos? Well, Tina Gao, who is part of Hans Zimmer's band, she plays the electric cello, and she can play, Wonder Woman's theme, that. For whatever reason, a video of Tina Gao popped up in my YouTube feed last night of her playing. It's a music video of her playing the theme to Last of the Mohicans. First of all, Tina Gao is an unbelievably beautiful woman. But watch this video. Just type in Tina Gao, Last of the Mohicans. She's smoking hot. And she's one of the most incredible musicians ever. And I really loved her rendition of the theme to Last of the Mohicans. I will find you. It's so good. I love Last of the Mohicans. It's a great movie. And it's Magua. Oh, I love that movie. It's so good. And I'm sure your wife liked it. It's incredibly romantic. It's an incredibly romantic film. Great movie. The Man with the Master Plan says, hey, yo, big fan. You're very knowledgeable in the movie world. I still find it unbelievable whenever I hear you talk about Hong Kong movies. Well, I mean, look, you know, that's another thing. Like, it's so crazy to me that people don't know Tony Leung and they don't know, like, Wong Kar-wai is one of my favorite directors. And, you know, I remember watching John Woo's, I think the first John Woo movie I ever saw was A Better Tomorrow. I want to say that. And that's when I first saw Chow Yun-fat. But then, like, I thought that, you know, everybody now, like anybody who loves action movies, I thought everybody, because there was a period of time where in the early 90s when John Woo became the hot thing and everybody was trading, like, getting The Killer. And I went and saw The Killer and Hard Boiled at the New Art here. And John Woo came and spoke. And, you know, seeing those movies, I remember, man, I was like, I couldn't get Bullet in the Head. I got to get Bullet in the Head. And I finally got it. But you know, people who don't go back and watch, like when Big Trouble in Little China came out, was it Zoo, The Warriors of the Magic Mountain? I mean, finding a lot of those Hong Kong martial arts movies that inspired John Carpenter was a thing in the 80s, and those were impossible to get. You had to get bootleg videotapes, and you have to get them subtitled. You couldn't get that stuff. And what's interesting is that I'm old. So it's like there was a period of time where that was where I was going through. I was in college, and we were watching all this kind of stuff. And I think that, you know, if you think about it, it's just a different generation. People are different. And now, you know, one of the great things is like I'm really into Korean cinema. And I think the last 25 years of Korean cinema, there's just been, you know, not just Parasite and things like that, but even go back to like Memories of Murder. And there's knockout stuff like I Saw the Devil. There's been some incredible Korean films coming out, and actually incredible films from all over the world. Like when I was in the early 80s, in the early 80s, I was really into Dutch films because they bring Dutch movies to Seattle. I met Paul Verhoeven when he brought Flesh and Blood in 1985 to the Seattle International Film Festival. I actually met him. And no one wanted to talk to him. That was the first time I ever talked to him. But seeing his movie, The Fourth Man, which is a precursor to Basic Instinct and Spetters and Katie Tipple and Turkish Delight and Soldier of Orange. You know, I mean, I just love movies my whole life. And I started working in home video when I was 13 in 1980. So, you know, I've always loved movies from around the world. And I've actually been sort of well, I'll get into this in the next topic, but thank you, Man with a Master Plan. Billy Atwood says, I love your thoughts on film. Well, thank you. Also, watching your behind-the-scenes content of Lord of the Rings when I was a kid made me appreciate and love the art of film and cinema so much. Thank you for all you do in this community, and keep it up. That's very nice of you to say, Billy. That's why I wanted to point out that one of the things for Lord of the Rings, when we were doing, I was part of a team. And I was part of a team at a company called Curdy Pellerin, Jeff Curdy and Michael Pellerin's company. And when I started working there, we were doing all of the DVDs were new. And we were doing all of the special features for the Pixar movies and Disney films. And Michael Pellerin had been doing special features for the big Disney Laserdisc box sets, the ones that came in the white boxes. And the first thing that I worked on for him was the Fantasia anthology that had come out, that we were working on it right after for Fantasia 2000. So it was going to be the box set of Fantasia and Fantasia 2000. And that's when I really started making DVD special features. And then I worked on The Emperor's New Groove, and I worked on Snow White. And then I did the feature length. I directed and edited the feature length documentary on the making of Tron. And what's really interesting about today, the fact that The Usual Suspects has been released on 4K, the special features for The Usual Suspects, I went to my boss, I went to Michael, and I got a call from MGM and they had heard that I knew Bryan Singer. This executive knew, Kathleen Fairweather knew that I knew Bryan Singer, and they couldn't get Bryan Singer to participate in The Usual Suspects. And Kevin Spacey, to his credit, Kevin Spacey said the only way he would participate in the special features, because back in the early aughts, DVDs were all the rage. Special features were all the rage. It was a great place to do business. And I had written and directed Free Enterprise, which made no money. And then I had to figure out, well, what was I going to do? So I jumped into special features. And The Usual Suspects, along with Carrie David, it was the first job that I got on my own. And I went to my boss and I said to Michael, I go, yo, would you want, I can bring in from MGM The Usual Suspects. And he goes, no. He wasn't interested in it. I'm like, it's a pretty big budget, but it wasn't as big as Disney budgets. So I went in and produced The Usual Suspects with Carrie and Dave Parker. And those special features were only released on the DVD in 2002. And they've been gone ever since. They've been gone. The Usual Suspects has come out on Blu-ray, but our special features were never released on Blu-ray ever. So now with Kino Lorber releasing The Usual Suspects today, the first job I got on my own that I producing special features was Usual Suspects. And what was really interesting, my boss at the time, I said, so I have to start my own little company, which is called Ludovico Technique, which is a Clockwork Orange reference, to produce special features. And because I'd worked with Bryan Singer, who I'd gone to film school with and knew from the Sci-Fi Academy, the Saturn Awards are tonight, I would just get phone calls from the studio. Like 20th Century Fox called me and said, yes, Bryan Singer says that you're going to be doing the special features for X-Men 2, X2, and we're also going to do X-Men 1.5, and we'd like you to do the special features for the re-release of X-Men. And I'm like, so that was fun. I mean, I was flying up back and forth the set of X-Men 2, shooting footage and doing special features, and that's why I was in Australia for a year working on Superman Returns. And it was very funny. I had to leave Curdy Pellerin after I worked on Fellowship of the Ring and Two Towers, which was, I was in New Zealand for on and off for months and months and months working on those films. And Disney called me because I had done Tron and they knew I had my own company and they asked me to do Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. So I went back and created a team of people and we went and we were in New Zealand for 14 months. And it was funny because I was jumping back over to Weta. It was crazy. But yeah, it was fun. So I really, my special feature career lasted from 2000 to 2009 when I did special features for The Hills Run Red, and then I stopped, and then I got rehired by my friend Roger Lay Jr. to work on Star Trek The Next Generation and Enterprise, where I was doing that for 3 years, and then the last special features I did was for Hills Run Red in 2020, because they released that on Blu-ray, and we ended up doing 8 hours of special features for that. So thank you for that. I like that you liked our special features and stuff. So that was very nice. Very nice of you to say. Wow, there's a lot of you here. The Man with the Master Plan says, hey, yo, again, I wanted to share with y'all my first movie experience in the USA was Career Opportunities. The scene where Jennifer Connelly riding that horse has forever been in my mind. For those of you who've never seen Career Opportunities, it was a fun comedy, and Jennifer Connelly was exquisite. I'm sure you can go on YouTube and go, Career Opportunities, Jennifer Connelly riding the rocking horse. Yes. And Man with Master Plan, if you really want to see peak Jennifer Connelly, might I suggest you watch the Dennis Hopper directed noir The Hot Spot, starring Jennifer Connelly, Victoria, by Miss Madsen, Virginia Madsen, and Don Johnson. That has some peak Jennifer Connelly in it, if you know what I'm saying. And I know you do. The Man with the Master Plan says, laughter. My first USA movie was actually on tape, and it was John Ritter's Skin Deep. That first scene with the glow-in-the-dark condoms killed me. Wow, I haven't thought about that movie in ages. John Ritter was in a sort of a superhero movie that I loved called Hero at Large. And it's kind of forgotten in our superhero world. But in New York, he plays this kind of out-of-work actor that there's a superhero movie coming out called Captain Avenger. And to promote it, they have people dressed up as Captain Avenger outside the theater and stuff. And while he's dressed as Captain Avenger, he ends up actually thwarting a crime. And he becomes kind of a real superhero. It's a movie that not many people talk about much, and it's probably a product of its time. But if you guys like superhero movies, check out Hero at Large with John Ritter, and I think Ann Archer. I haven't seen it in ages, but it's good. It's a good movie. Jordan Saylor says, "Where's the best site to buy hot toys?" Well, in North America, Sideshow Toys is probably the best place to buy hot toys in America. Now, it takes a while for them to get them, but I have to say, Sideshow has been great in terms of customer service. There's a lot of places to buy hot toys. Toys Wonderland. There's a lot of places all over the world, but Sideshow Toy, I've been buying from Sideshow for 20 years, and I really like Sideshow, and they've got great customer service. And I'll tell you something, their shipping is very fast. When they get a shipment in, and you've pre-ordered it or you order it, they get it to you. I mean, if I order a hot toy in the morning, I mean, they're in California, but in the morning, I'll get it the next day. That's how quick they are. But, they don't have a lot of hot toys. A lot of them sell out, but Sideshow, and they've got a good point system, and so check that out. Try Sideshow. By the way, I'm not affiliated with Sideshow. I've just been buying from them for a long time. Some old guy in Hawaii, my friend, says worked at Monaco Video in San Francisco from 89 to 94. The local Chinese theater ran Hong Kong movie trailers for us to tape transfer for TV advertising. Introduced me and my friends to John Woo, etc. That was a great time. I mean, people like Ringo Lam and Sweetheart and like Peak. I mean, at the same time I was watching John Woo, I was watching like Sweetheart movies like Peking Opera Blues. And, when Quentin Tarantino made Reservoir Dogs, everyone's like, well, it's based on Ringo Lam's City on Fire. So then you have to go find City on Fire and watch that. So, yeah. Let's see. Sanu.com. People, please watch Sympathy for Mr. and Mrs. Vengeance. That is a great trilogy, the Vengeance trilogy. Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. Is it Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, Lady Vengeance, and what is the third one? And I'm forgetting the third one, but I have it on Blu-ray right around the corner. I actually have the Vengeance trilogy in a box set. Those movies are great. Old Boy isn't part of that, is it? It's not, right? I don't think so. Now I want to know. Let's see, the Vengeance trilogy. Hang on. The Vengeance trilogy Blu-ray. It is. Old Boy is. Okay, I was right. Okay. So it's Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, Old Boy, and Lady Vengeance. All three of those movies are great, by the way. And you need to get them. And of course, they're directed by Park Chan-wook, who has his new movie is like Decision to Leave or something. I think it's called that, which I have not seen. But he's an incredible director. And he made the last episode of Designing Hollywood. I interviewed the costume designers that worked with him on Stoker, and Park Chan-wook did a great. God, what was it? I think it's called Dumplings, and it was a segment of. Was it called 3? It was a trilogy of like Hong Kong horror shorts. There's a spider right here. I'm going to grab it. Go away, spider. Yeah, but anyway, those are great, and I agree. Avet Sharma says, "Hey Rob, do you think RRR can bag any Saturn Award?" Probably. I would imagine the Saturn Awards. I was supposed to be at the Saturn Awards. I had a little bit of a COVID scare today. I was on my way to the Saturn Awards, and I don't have COVID. It's all good, but I didn't know that at the time, so I had to not go. And I had tickets. The 50th anniversary Saturn Awards, I've been the recipient, or my team. I won a Saturn Award for Free Enterprise, and our Star Trek Extras team and the Restoration team won 2 Saturns. So that was fun. You know what? RRR is great. And it's, by the way, if you guys haven't seen RR, now it takes a certain sensibility. It's coming back and it's being re-released in IMAX. And I would suggest everyone go check it out. So yeah, I would imagine RRR would probably end up winning a Saturn Award of some kind. Logan Landis says, okay, so I dipped out and watched the Tina Guao Last of the Mohicans cover. That was dope, my dude. That score always gives me chills. I know, and she gives me chills too. DJ Jerry Nice says, still stoked. Since Gunn prefers the obscure, which oddball DC properties would you like to see get greenlit? Lobo could be fun. Appreciate you, Rob. Lobo would be good. I mean, Al Renshaw says Booster Gold, Animal Man, and Kite Man coming. Laugh out loud. Kite Man is coming. Like I said, I mean, I'm a big proponent of the Vertigo titles. Like, I'm a huge fan of stuff like Kid Eternity and Shade the Changing Man and a lot of those titles. I really, here's what I think. If I could ask James Gunn to do anything, I want him to do The Invisibles. The Invisibles. Bring me The Invisibles. That's what I would love to see. I don't know if they'll do it, but man, they'll probably have to do it as a series. But my God, would I love to see the series. And I'll tell you something else. They probably wouldn't do this, but there's another series I would love to see James Gunn do called The Filth. If you haven't seen The Filth or read The Filth, get The Filth. And it's not about what you'd think. It's not like Bring the Filthy. It's just called The Filth. And yeah, check that out. So check it out. Our own moderator, Alex Detman, says, speaking of the man with the master plan, have you ever seen Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead? Young Andy Garcia and prime Christopher Walken is my favorite movie of all time, and I can't figure out why. Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead is pretty good. It came out in the wake. It was considered to be one of the most Tarantino-esque of the Tarantino, not call them copycats, but movies that were inspired by Tarantino's Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs. That was one of them. It's pretty good. So yeah, they're good. Now, there is something else, kids. There is something else I wanted to bring up on this chat, and I would be remiss. I know you're waiting to hear about this. James Cameron. It was reported that James Cameron came out today slamming some superhero movies, slamming superheroes, and I wanted to jump into this, and because we all know and love James Cameron. I've loved James Cameron since 1984 when I saw Terminator. For the Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror Films, I had to interview James Cameron on stage after he brought the director's cut of The Abyss to show us a print, 500-seat Norris Theater at USC, where I'd gone to school. I was interviewing him. I did all this research. And I know James Cameron's a hard ass. I love James Cameron, but I was terrified. And I'm giving my opening remarks about the Terminator. And I was to bring him on stage. And I had to be on stage with him for an hour interviewing him. Me and James Cameron, 500 students. Norris is packed. And I'm giving these opening remarks. And I said, and I think all of us in 1984, we all went to the theater and we saw the Terminator. And after 100 minutes, we came out of the theater breathless, wondering, who is James Cameron and what is he going to do next? Please welcome James Cameron. Everyone like screaming. James Cameron walks out. He looks at me. Oh, man. He looks at me. He takes a microphone and he goes, well, if you left the theater after 100 minutes, you missed the end of the Terminator because the Terminator is actually 108 minutes long. And of course, the audience just roared with laughter, and I felt like I was 2 feet high. Now, what he was doing was he was testing me, and he wanted to see how I would stand up under scrutiny. So there I was. I had to interview James Cameron, me and him on stage in front of 500 film students and Academy members of the Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror Films. And I had to sit there. It was the longest hour of my life. But after that interview, and we were walking down, he stopped me and he shook my hand and he looked me straight in the eye and he said, "I really appreciate how prepared you were for this interview." And I was like, victory, victory. So anyway, I'm still a James Cameron fan. Of course, he made Terminator, he made Aliens, he made The Abyss, he made True Lies. And then he went on to, of course, make Titanic. And he made, of course, Avatar. And now he's got Avatar: The Way of Water coming up. But I'm a huge Cameron fan. Huge Cameron fan. What did James Cameron say today? And I know people are going to be pissed. Let's delve into it, shall we? Let's delve in to what James Cameron said. Here's this article. This comes to us from Variety today. Go James. James Cameron criticizes Marvel and DC characters. They all act like they're in college. They really don't have relationships. This was written by Zach Sharf. And this is from, when was this from? This was from today at 10:48 a.m. James Cameron's Avatar: The Way of Water press tour has officially kicked off with a new interview in the New York Times in which he was joined by stars Sam Worthington, Zoe Saldana, Sigourney Weaver. The long-awaited Avatar sequel takes place 15 years after the original, so it was important for Cameron to depict a new sense of maturity in his protagonists Jake Sully and Neytiri. Such maturity is lacking in the characters that populate Marvel and DC movies, Cameron argued. Zoe and Sam now play parents 15 years later, Cameron said. In the first movie, Sam's character leaps off his flying creature and essentially changes the course of history as a result of this crazy, almost suicidal leap of faith. And Zoe's character leaps off a limb and assumes there's going to be some nice big leaves down there that can cushion her fall. But when you're a parent, you don't think that way. So for me, as a parent of 5 kids, I'm saying, what happens when those characters mature and realize they have a responsibility outside of their own survival? Cameron continued, when I look at these big, spectacular films, I'm looking at you, Marvel and DC. It doesn't matter how old the characters are. They all act like they're in college. They have relationships, but they really don't. They never hang up their spurs because they're kids. The things that really ground us and give us power, love, and a purpose, those characters don't experience it, and I think that's not the way to make movies. Another way not to make movies is to make underwater scenes. Cameron shot a majority of Avatar: The Way of Water in large water tanks, and his cast had to train to hold their breath for minutes on end so that Cameron could film longer takes underwater. When asked what's gained from shooting in actual water, as opposed to the more CGI approach taken in films like Aquaman and Disney's upcoming The Little Mermaid, Cameron answered, I don't know, maybe that it looks good? Come on, you want it to look like the people are underwater, so they need to be underwater, Cameron told The Times. It's not some gigantic leap. If you were making a Western, you'd be out learning how to ride a horse. I knew Sam was a surfer, but Sigourney and Zoe and the others weren't particularly ocean-oriented folks, so I was very specific about what would be required, and we got the world's best breath hold specialists to talk them through it. Avatar: The Way of Water opens in theaters nationwide December 16th. Okay. So, James, let's, first of all, you know what I'm going to say. I'm going to say, Jimmy, Mr. Cameron, I love you to death. You've done the research and development for many, many movies. For all of Hollywood, you've been doing R&D since, well, really since The Abyss, the pseudopod sequence. You could track that. Terminator 2, of course. The T-1000 led directly to things like Jurassic Park. That technology wouldn't have existed without your work, Jimmy. I get it. But when you talk about characters don't have families, I give you the opening of Avengers Endgame, bruh. Oh my God. If you want to see, I gotta say, that one scene when Hawkman's entire family gets snapped by Thanos, the snapping happens and they disappear. That opening scene, first of all, genius. Come on, Marvel, get back to that kind of genius storytelling. Genius. And then Mr. Fantasy starts playing. You see the Marvel logo. Come on, dude. Here's the thing. I get, and I think all of you should understand, why filmmakers like Martin Scorsese and people like James Cameron, everyone's talking about, they're using comic book movies, but what they're really saying is tentpole IP properties have completely supplanted all other kinds of filmmaking, at least at the studio level. And they have. Movies used to be a vibrant artistic force. The 20th century gave us movies, gave us feature films, probably the most vibrant storytelling ever done in the history of humanity. I mean, and if you go back and look at films of the 70s, whether it was... Now, look, there's always been crap. I'll tell you, there's always been crap, I understand. And I am a connoisseur of crap. I have loved crap in my past. I've watched all kinds of terrible horror movies. I'll watch any science fiction, fantasy, and horror film you put in front of me. When I was a kid, I wanted to watch all of it. All of it. It didn't matter whether it was good or bad. Although I could discern whether it was good or bad. I just loved it all. But the major studios, especially in the 70s, when filmmakers retook, if you read Peter Biskin's book, Easy Riders, Raging Bulls, about how filmmakers came out of the dying studio system of the 60s and took back Hollywood with movies like Easy Rider, which led to things like Godfather and all the 70s movies. Michael Cimino ended up making like The Deer Hunter. I mean, all the filmmaking that we know and love, everything from Shampoo to The Conversation to All the President's Men to Patty Chayefsky writing Network. I mean, the filmmaking in the 70s, as a matter of fact, here's what the filmmakers are talking about. Movies used to be a vibrant cultural force. There was foreign films released in cinemas, even the studios. I mean, George Lucas and Francis Ford Coppola brought Kurosawa's Kagemusha, the Shadow Warrior, to the States. So there was a lot of diversity coming out of, I'm talking about the kinds of stories that were being told. So let's look at the box office movies of 1976, right? 1976, by the way, the year Logan's Run came out, just so you know. Box office movies of 1976. Here were some of the biggest popular movies of 1976 and dramas from 1976. Carrie, A Star is Born, Rocky, The Omen, Logan's Run, Taxi Driver, Marathon Man, All the President's Men, Murder by Death, Silver Streak, The Enforcer, The Outlaw Josie Wales, the original Freaky Friday, Burt Reynolds in Gator, The Pink Panther Strikes Again, The Bad News Bears, King Kong, The Missouri Breaks, Robin and Marion, Ode to Billy Joel, oh my God, Grizzly, Bugsy Malone, Bingo Long and his Traveling All-Stars, Disney released Gus. I mean, these were all movies that came out, and they were studio pictures. That is a wide range of filmmaking, all different kinds of films, comedies, dramas, romances, docudramas. These are all big studio pictures. This is what the studio was releasing in the 70s. We have none of that anymore. The studios are releasing only large, big IPs. And why is that? Because movies are so expensive. These movies were not costing $100 or $200 million. As a matter of fact, we have James Cameron to thank for that. Terminator, I remember when Terminator 2 was being made, everyone's like, oh my God, this movie's going to cost $100 million to make. People were freaking out that there was going to be a movie that cost $100 million. I mean, that is some crazy ass shit. $100 million. Can you believe that? I mean, that is crazy. You know what? I don't even know if I'm still broadcasting anymore because I seem to have frozen. I don't know what happened. I didn't even know. Hang on, let me see if let's see. I do not know what has occurred here. Am I still broadcasting? I would hope so. Wow. Gosh, everybody. I don't even know if I'm still streaming. Am I? I cannot. I do not know. I am looking at the live YouTube stream, and I can't even tell you if I am in fact streaming. I'm just going to assume that I am. Or keep talking. I don't know what happened. Allow me to look and see. Just bear with me. Did anyone hear any of that? I have no idea. Oh, I see what's happening. Why does YouTube do this to me? It looks like Google, if I'm still broadcasting, wanted to know whether it was actually me on the stream. So I don't even know if I'm still live. if any of you have even heard me. So this happens. Let's assume that I'm still here. I'm still streaming. Okay, that's good. All right, I'm still here. So how it works is I got kicked off my own stream because sometimes YouTube wants to verify that it's you. So anyway, I hope you heard me, but I was saying all these things. Now, here's the thing. If I lost, I probably lost. So whatever super chats were there, Shane Roxas, I see that you have sent super chats. Anything but there was before that, there's some super chats that I have missed. So if Tom Jr. Jackson, within the last 5 minutes, if anyone can see those super chats, and Tom, if you could send them back to me, because I got kicked off my own stream. Luckily, I was still streaming, but I couldn't do anything. Anyway, back to what I was trying to say. So James Cameron and a lot of other filmmakers like Martin Scorsese, when they're talking about the movies, it's not that they hate superhero movies, and it's not that superhero movies are bad, but what they're talking about is that's only one kind of movie, one kind of popcorn entertainment, and whether it doesn't matter whether it's Harry Potter or Uncharted video game movies, we're not getting the kinds of diversity of storytelling at the studio level because the studios are now shooting for the fences. It's no longer who's going to go see I'm really curious. Like she said, the new movie about Harvey Weinstein, the two reporters who uncovered Harvey Weinstein. If that movie were released in the 70s, it would probably make a lot of money, cause a big critical splash. Those are the kinds of movies that studios were releasing. Not anymore. So I think these filmmakers, when James Cameron's talking about superhero movies, and I'm sure James Cameron loves studio movies. I honestly believe that he, in fact, does love superhero movies, especially when they're good. He was, after all, going to make a Spider-Man movie. The problem is, I think that all of these filmmakers are frustrated that culturally we aren't getting the diversity of films that we used to get from the major studios. I mean, hell, and we're getting them differently. We're getting them in different ways. We're getting them as 10-part streaming service shows, and there's great stuff. House of the Dragon. There's a 10-part cinematic story that certainly has big screen characteristics. Loved it. There's great stuff being made, but the 2 to 3 hour, actually 90-minute to 3 hour form of the feature film has been seriously curtailed at the studio level because studios now, there's too much money involved. They're now all publicly held companies. What they want to do is spend $150 or $200 million and make $1 billion. That's the business model. Now, what I don't understand, what I've never understood, is why aren't they doing like what Blumhouse does? And I'm not what they did with the Halloween movies, but I'm saying when they take Lee Wanell, he does Upgrade. They let him do Invisible Man. It's an $8 million spend. It makes $100 million worldwide. To me, that's great business. Smile. A $17 million spend without marketing. $17 million bucks. That movie's made like $125 million worldwide. Now, why aren't studios releasing one of those a month? Bringing in new filmmakers. I think the director who made Smile, that was his first feature. And who knows where they're going to go. I mean, nowadays the studios are bringing in filmmakers that don't exactly have a track record and they give them the opportunity to make a $100 million movie. But how does that let anybody build a career? It's hard to do that, and it's a tough one. So, it's tough. And I understand, because when I was growing up, you go to the movie theaters, there were so many different kinds of movies to see. And now, I mean, coming out of the pandemic, we're just not getting a diversity of topics in the movies that are being made. And I think that's what Cameron and a lot of these filmmakers are responding to. And look, even our comic book movies, especially right now the MCU, we've sort of hit a wall in that there's not a lot of diversity left. Once you've done the Infinity Saga, they haven't really shown us a new direction yet. I know they're talking about the multiverse saga, but for some reason, and as much as I love the MCU, for some reason it's felt very lightweight. And where are the consequences? I mean, you go back and you watch Winter Soldier, and I use that because it's got that 70s conspiracy thriller bent to it, but it is so satisfying on so many levels. Even things like Civil War, you go back and you watch the best of the Marvel films, you feel like you're getting a meal. And the culmination with Infinity War and Endgame, I mean, a lot of people have problems with certain things about Endgame. I'm like, no, man, this is an excellent. Infinity War and Endgame are the ultimate comic book blowout freak out that I wanted to see on a movie screen since I was a little kid. I watch those movies. I find them endlessly entertaining, watching them all together. Plot holes and all, if you think they have plot holes. But again, those movies have real, genuine pathos. And I go back, Cameron's talking about those characters don't have families. Yes, they do. I mean, if you look at Hawkeye, his entire arc, because he loses his family, becomes Ronin, he starts just killing fools, going out after the criminal underworld. Absolutely does he have family. And it's just that, comic book characters can't necessarily change that much, but when they can, they do. The Punisher had kids, he had family. Frank Castle did, but I understand where Cameron's coming from. It's not like there's ordinary people. The movie Ordinary People. You don't see that within the comic book realm. And I understand that. And do we really want to? I mean, come on. So I get where Cameron's coming from. I get where all these filmmakers are coming from. And I don't disagree. I mean, I think at a certain point, like, I love Taika Waititi. I really do. And you look at his early films, What We Do in the Shadows, incredibly innovative. The Wilder People, that was a delightful movie, and Jojo Rabbit, incredible. But I couldn't abide Thor: Love and Thunder. I wanted to like slit my own throat, and I love the MCU. I hated the humor. I hated the fact that it made Thor into a buffoon. I didn't like it at all, and I'm like, it's gone too far. They need to pull back. And look, I still think the MCU has a lot of gas in it. As I said, I love the scripts for Secret Invasion, and no, I'm not going to tell you who's a Skrull. If anyone is a Skrull. I'm really looking forward to Quantumania, but again, I don't know. I mean, I thought one of the great things about Ant-Man, the first Ant-Man, is the climax of the movie takes place in Cassie's bedroom on a train. It's not same with Iron Man 1. It's one man trying to discover his soul and has a crisis of conscience. It was good stuff. And I think the Marvel Cinematic Universe, if you go from Iron Man 1 to Endgame, it's like, wow, we need to get back to those, I don't know, the core humanity of our characters. But in terms of the wider, look, I don't think we're ever going to go back to the way the studios were making movies in the 70s. I mean, hell, I think back, I was excited when the science fiction film directed, of course, it was based on a book by Patty Chayefsky, but it was changed. But why am I drawing a blank on his name? I can't believe I've said so many names, and I guess I'm running out of gas. But Altered States, the movie Altered States, which I really loved. And Altered States was in the wake of Star Wars. It was a big release. It was a big film, and of course, Altered States was directed by the crazy Ken Russell, who had directed things like Tommy, Women in Love. He was this crazy director. The Devils. Come on, Warner Brothers, release Uncut Devils. I know you can't, but please do it. Why can't we get it? But will we ever see the likes of that again? I don't know. Tom told me to check Twitter. So let me go back. Shane Roxas, 1 of 3. Shane says, "Hi Rob, in the MCU, what if Wanda is not the original Scarlet Witch? Let's say a preceding Nexus being of the same title came into conflict with the mutants in the 60s. This being takes the no more mutants route and all humanity forgets, No Way Home style. Wanda learns of this, no way she's dead by the way, and undoes it for whatever reason. My sloppy theory, but could be a cool way to maintain mutants in history and bring them into the MCU. Thoughts? Love the show. Well, John Campy and I were talking about the No More Mutants, House of M route, and that's where the mutants went. We've been talking about that for a while. I love the idea. I mean, I don't know about it being done in the 60s, because the problem is then you have to deal with all of that time that passed. But it could work. I mean, I do love the idea of Wanda bringing back all of the mutants. I really do love that idea. I think it could be great. Purple Funk says, talks bad about James Cameron, stream goes down. Skynet? By the way, Shane, thanks for supporting the channel. I don't know what it was. It was so, what happens is if you, YouTube, Google sometimes prompts, they have to know it's you. And I haven't been prompted in a while, and I'm live. I guess they don't make any delineations about whether you're live or not. So suddenly I couldn't, it looked frozen to me, and I was locked out of my own channel until I verified, when I realized that I had to verify who I was again. But I guess I never went off the air, so that's good. That's good. Glenn Mark says, I've been sitting on an SC waiting for the day to send it. Oh, a super chat. You once had a game idea on the John Campia show where people make up mid and post-season credits or post-credit scenes for old movies. That's a good idea. You should do that. I don't remember that. Wait, Glenn Mark says, wait, this is one of two. Okay, I see. I've been sitting on a super chat waiting for the day to send it. You once had a game idea on the John Campy show where people make up mid and post-credit scenes for old movies. In John Ritter's apartment, the Hoff walks out of the darkness. Hoff, you're not the only captain, Mr. Nichols. Steve, no, there's 61 of us. Hoff, I'm Colonel Nick Fury, and you're right. I'm here to talk with you and the others about the Captain Avenger initiative. Okay, Glenn Mark, that's pretty funny. Clearly, you remember Hero at Large. That's, of course, a reference to Captain Avenger, the John Ritter movie, Hero at Large. That's a good one. Yeah. That's very funny. And you remember Captain Avenger. If you guys haven't seen Hero at Large, it's a delightful movie. You should check it out. Papa Jish says, hi, Rob. I hope you're doing well. I recently watched The Exorcist for the first time. Man, what an epic. Did not expect that long intro in Iraq. Papa Jish, I got to tell you, first time I watched Exorcist, it was one of the first pre-recorded video cassettes I ever got. I was going to watch it at midnight. I saved it. I started it at midnight. I couldn't get past Iraq. That scene, I don't know why, it freaked me out. The dogs tearing at each other, the sound effects, Father Marin standing in front of the Pazuzu statue. I could not deal. I was terrified. The Exorcist is my favorite horror film of all time. And I still think it has lost none of its power. None of its power. Papa Jish says, okay, and why does Andor look better than Obi-Wan? Well, I think Andor looks better than Obi-Wan because they're shooting on actual locations. One of the things that they've been able to do with Mandalorian and Obi-Wan and Boba Fett was all of those, for the most part, were shot at Manhattan Beach Studios here in Manhattan Beach, outside of LA, close to the beach. It's a huge studio facility. It's fairly new. And most of it's shot on they shoot outside, but they also shoot mostly on the volume stages. And the volume stages are giant LCD screens that they can put backgrounds on so they don't have to shoot against the blue screen. And what they do is when they move the camera, there's like the parallax effect, so the background moves with the camera, so they can all make it look like it's any environment. The problem is it limits the way you can shoot in terms of your lens choices, in terms of, well, how you can shoot and how you can move the camera. It's a way to do these shows for far less money. Andor, for the most part, they too use volume, but it's shot on locations. It's shot outdoors. And it looks like, the thing about volume is ultimately it only goes so far. And I think when you look at a show like Game of Thrones, the scenes at Dragonstone, the bridge scenes, they've had two of them. They use the volume sequence. They use the volume in that. and they used it well because they used that volume for when they had close-ups of the opposing forces on either side. You have to use, like with any tool, you have to use it sparingly. And one of the problems, I think Obi-Wan really suffered because of it, especially in nighttime scenes where these empty places where Vader was battling. We're used to seeing lightsaber fights in Star Wars environments, and they're using, I believe they're using not even post lightsabers anymore. They're using, or lightsabers that are augmented in post. So Andor is a show that, by the way, I can't wait. 3 more hours, another episode. That Andor is a show that it just looks better because it's shot like a real Star Wars movie, which is on location. You're going to be seeing the volume stages used more and more and more, and it cuts down. It cuts down on production costs, but it doesn't look nearly as good, unfortunately. Derp Jones says, "How much did you play PlayStation 1 in the 90s?" I got to tell you, Derp, not a lot. I was a Nintendo 64 guy. And I never played. My friend Sean had a PlayStation 1, but I didn't play much of it. I much preferred Nintendo at the time. I jumped into PlayStation with PlayStation 2. And that's when I really got into it. So yeah, I didn't really play PlayStation 1. So let me see. I'm looking at Tom sent me, Tom Jr. Jackson, in case I missed any of the super chats. I think Tom would send me more. Oh, okay, good. So Dieter Bastian sent me a super chat. Dieter, my compatriot. And Rob answers to John Campia, "I'll never stay for the end credits." Rob, please say thank you to Roy Lee for producing Barbarian. What a trip. Loved it. 9 out of 10. I will do that. I will send that to him. He'll probably love that. Binary Sunset Media says 1976 top 10 are almost all classics. They are, right? And they were. And Tom Jr. Jackson says, "Is it safe?" That's, of course, from Marathon Man. So thank you for that, Tom. I think I'm all caught up. Sanu.com says, "Thor, Love and Thunder is a cartoon, and Andor is cinema. More cinema." You know what? I totally agree with that. I absolutely totally agree with that. And again, that's what people want. That's what people want. They want more cinema. Well, listen, everybody. This has been a fun show. I'm going to bring this to an end. Covering this is amazing. Look, I am very excited about the possibilities for the DC film cinematic universe moving forward, whether it's TV shows, whether it's animation, whether it's movies. And again, you've got a group of guys, and remember, it's not just James Gunn, and it's not just Peter. It's their extended family. It's James Wan. The guy, the business end of this new team at DC is also the man that produced all of James Wan's Conjuring Universe films. So they're deeply entrenched with the success of Warner Brothers. There couldn't be a better team. It is very exciting, and I'm really looking forward. I think the next 6 months and a year, we're going to see some really exciting stuff being announced at DC. Again, do I think James Gunn is going to direct a Superman movie? Hard to say, but it would not surprise me. And you know what? There's no better way to announce. I think James Gunn could, his Guardians of the Galaxy sensibility, not his Suicide Squad sensibility, but if you take his Guardians of the Galaxy sensibility in terms of his ability to create humor and action and adventure, I think that's what Superman needs. I think we need a more lighthearted Superman. Now, I don't want it to be a comedy. I still want it to have that epic feel of Americana. But I think James Gunn could do it. And I think it's going to be very exciting. And on that note, I am going to end this. Oh, Philip Music says, "Thoughts on the 1977 classic, The White Buffalo?" You know what, Philip? I saw that once. And I don't have fond memories of it. It is not great. And I don't even think it's as good as Sam Fuller's White Dog, which is a different kind of a movie. But The White Buffalo, I couldn't really opine on it much. But now you make me want to see it again. So we shall see. Good call. Good pull, though. Black Bono Lala sends a super sticker. That's pretty fun. So yeah. And now I'm going to end this stream. And you guys have been great. First of all, I want to thank Alex, and I want to thank Tom Jr. Jackson for being the great moderators that you are. I want to thank everybody who generously supports this channel via super chats and tips. And for those people who are members of the channel, I want to thank you. And we don't have a member call coming up this weekend, but we will have one coming up the weekend after. I want to remind everybody that the newest episode of Designing Hollywood will be up by tomorrow, which is with Ruth Carter, who is the Academy Award-winning costume designer of Wakanda Forever. She began her career as the costume designer on Spike Lee's School Days back in the 80s. She was delightful. I loved speaking with her. And that will be up. And, of course, I'll be on the John Campy Show tomorrow, where we're going to be talking about more of this, hearing about John's opinions about all of this. And, of course, Andor, the new episode of Andor, drops in less than 3 hours. And I'm going to watch it in Dolby Vision. And look out for Latin X-Men, Alex Montano and Roberto Suarez's new show in 97% Spanish, coming out. And, of course, Elizabeth and I are bringing Whining About Movies back this Sunday with Everything Everywhere All at Once. That is a show where my girlfriend Elizabeth and I, we share a bottle of wine and talk about a movie we saw. And the first one back is Everything Everywhere All at Once. So that is exciting, and that is everything that's happening on the channel. And remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, hey, like, subscribe. YouTube's telling me not enough people like these shows I do. So like it. And that was a YouTube message. But anyway, if you don't like it, don't like it. But if you do like it, it would help the analytics. And on that note, oh no, I'll talk about that later. We'll see you tomorrow on the John Campy Show. Watch Andor tonight. And if you like physical media, go get the 4K of The Usual Suspects, which just came out, that has our special features back from being out of print for 20 years. Thanks very much, and I will see you all in the next video.